I am Cami Wilson, and I'm the Divisional Vice President for Training and Development for Bealls Inc. I'm responsible, and my team's responsible for creating the training and development focuses for the entire organization. Consider myself a loyal person. I've had 2 career jobs in my life, Bealls and Kohl's. Sometimes those get mixed up, Kohl's and Bealls. And I also like to say we just wear many hats. Sometimes training and development falls under you work with people. So if it's a people focus, a lot of times we get involved in different projects throughout the organization. You might need to take a few steps back to catapult yourself forward and to continue to grow. Let's forget about the form. Let's forget about exactly what that form looks like and how easy it is to navigate through. And let's really focus on what's important, the conversations that we're having. And we have the opportunity because we are exposed to everyone in the organization, from a part-time associate clear up to SVPs. We create and develop training that everybody sees and touches. I think when I actually stood up at a town hall and told everybody that we were going to create training for everyone and deliver training for everyone, I think my boss probably gulped a little hard on that one, like, wow, that's a big statement to make, Cami. And I could probably spend a day with you talking about it.
Right.
So,
yeah, should be pretty easy. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, good. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell me maybe your title and what do you do for Bealls?
Absolutely. So I am Cami Wilson, and I'm the Divisional Vice President for Training and Development for Bealls Inc. I just anniversaried my 7th year here, which
Congratulations.
is really hard to believe. And I've actually been in Florida now for a decade. So it hit me the other day, and I was like, wow, it's been a decade since I moved down here. So what I do for Bealls, it's really sometimes easy to explain, but I'm responsible, and my team's responsible for creating the training and development focuses for the entire organization. So for stores, for corporate, for DCs, engaging our team members across the organization in training opportunities. So I'd say that's the first and foremost part of my job. The second piece is the talent management piece, and just really looking at all those functions across the organization and how we succession plan, our associates, and who's the backfill for the next position and what that looks like, and what tools and resources do they need to develop and grow to have that skill set to be able to step into new positions. And then, of course, we'll talk about this later, but in order to do that, there's a feedback process. And my team manages the process of how we deliver feedback to our associates across the organization in order for them to obtain, the right types of messages to move forward and really be able to empower themselves to take certain training classes, set forth a pathway for their career and development. And I also like to say we just wear many hats. Sometimes training and development falls under you work with people. So if it's a people focus, a lot of times we get involved in different projects throughout the organization, such as recognition or retention, and how do we support just really the entire people population across the organization.
Yeah, it sounds like fun.
It is. It's a fun job. And I always say,
right?
It is. I always say to people, if there's a crisis in training and development, we're probably doing something wrong. So I really do have a great job. It's so exciting. It's fun. And because it focuses on the development of people and the growth of people, and who wouldn't like to be able to, focus on those things daily.
Right,
so.
right. Mm-hmm. Well, I have to first say that you nailed it with that shirt.
Thank you.
Yeah,
very, very proud of it. I rotated, I think, 5 or 6 purple shirts, and it was down to last night, and this one actually got delivered, and I was like, that's the one.
That's the
thank
one
you.
For sure. Yeah.
It's very important.
Yep, love it. You might have to tell me where you got it, because if they have extra large,
you're okay. They're like, I might
be rocking a women's shirt for my next podcast.
That's great. I love it. I love it. So
it's going to be great. I'm telling you, it's going to look fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Really, really well done on that component, and
awesome.
Everything else that you do as well. I'm excited to dive into it. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about your background. Like, where'd you come from?
Great. So I will share here in a few minutes that I haven't always been in training and development as my main concentration. I actually did start there, though. So I think this is a great story to start out with. But I'm not going to call it a career job, but my first job ever was teaching to an extent, but I was a tour guide in a cave system called Ohio Caverns. So I spent a summer leading tourists, if you want to call them guests, through a cave system. And I had to teach them various things about the cave. So crystals, stalactites, stalagmites, I had to learn about those. Walk them through the components. There's total darkness down in a cavern, so explaining to them why that was. Really just putting on a good show as a 17, 18-year-old.
There it is, huh?
Yeah, hey, Ryan, that's great. Okay, so yes.
Ryan is amazing. He's a magician.
This is awesome. Yeah, so it brings back memories. But yes, I that was my first job. I think the most interesting component was I had to teach people about bats flying around because they were in the cavern. And essentially what you would do is there were certain points where you would walk backwards and you would actually teach and engage with the individuals that were taking the tour. But there was parts that were a little more dangerous. So you'd have to turn around. And it never failed, but a bat would swoop right by your face at that point, right? And you can't react, you can't scream, because guess what? It's a trickle down of everybody behind you starts, panicking and that there's bats. So just an interesting, fun way to kind of introduce it. And maybe at the time, I didn't know it, but it was a precursor to what I really wanted to do down the road and how I wanted to navigate my career. So I started out teaching. So, yeah.
That's fun. So it's a naturally occurring cave, obviously, not a man-made cave. But
naturally occurring. It was about 45 minutes from my hometown in Ohio. So, so grew up in Ohio. It's a very small town, as I said. It's northwest of the Columbus area, and it's called Rushville. So Rushville is something that when I say that, people look at me a little strange, and Rushville, they actually a lot of times ask me to spell it. So it's like it sounds, it's Rush, and then like Transylvania, it's the Sylvania part. So very small town in Ohio, about 400 people. I think the misconception might be that I graduated with like 28 people, but I didn't. I went to a pretty decent sized high school, not large by any means, but about 155 people in my graduating class. So lived in a small town, and I loved that. I loved growing up. I had a great childhood, and but was interested in doing different things and moving to bigger cities, and took the opportunity to go to college in Bowling Green State University, which is northern Ohio near the Toledo area. So I did that. My concentration was actually in product development and apparel at the time. So I definitely had an inclination that I was going into retail. I did minor in marketing, and I think that's where kind of introduced me a little bit more to the business side. My first 2 years, I thought maybe I would be a buyer. Loved the design aspect. I can't draw, so I was smart and decided that probably wasn't the best thing for me. But probably around, I would say, my sophomore into junior year, I decided that I wanted to lean in a little bit more to the leadership, business management piece of it. And I took an internship with JCPenney at the time. So over the summer, that was a good experience. It was more just learning to work in retail. So I did that and got more interested, kind of concentrated some of my courses towards the end of college towards more of the management piece. And then had the opportunity to engage in an internship with Kohl's department stores between my junior and senior year.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was great. And the internship with Kohl's was very serious. Like you came on board and they said, okay, if you're going to take this internship, the intention is to make sure that you come on with us as a management trainee next year. So I spent the summer doing that, had a really great experience with them. And nice part of it, I got a job offer like September, October into my senior year. To go into their management trainee program. So I continue to work for them just to earn extra money over my senior year of college and also to learn the organization so I would know more about it, make more connections before I started with them after graduation.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So really great background there. Yeah. So one of the things I was telling Crystal actually that you were coming on the podcast today, and I was going to talk to you, and she's like, "Oh, well, Cami's also on the Disaster Relief Foundation with me." So she's like, "Yeah, Cami and I are like the only two people that kind of keep it light and keep it funny and you guys try to laugh and it's enjoyable, make it as enjoyable as possible because that's a very challenging process, and you're dealing with very serious situations and very traumatic and sad situations. Can you comment on that just for a second before we keep?
Absolutely, Matt. It's been, you feel sometimes like you're really helping through that, and we are just, as Crystal said, we're sitting on a call making decisions, but they're such impactful decisions about how we can help people who have just gone through something catastrophic, and it's sad and it's hard. And Crystal does such a nice job of reaching out to other partners and how we can help even people past what we're doing through the foundation. But it is, I'm so happy to have been asked to do that. And I think it's been 4 or 5 years now. I held an operations role, which I'll speak about with just Bealls Florida. And I think that's kind of how I got positioned on there. And then just naturally, I have a passion for it. It's such an important thing that we do. and the amount of people we've helped, and it's amazing. And it's something that I wasn't used to, right? I grew up in Ohio. I didn't know about hurricanes. I experienced some damage to my home this past year that was pretty significant with the hurricane. And to be able to kind of just step away from all of that and, decide that we're going to be able to support people is great. It's a really great group of people who are on the committee and the foundation who help support that. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the details, just in case people don't know of the foundation and how it operates and kind of the structure of it. So it's a foundation that was formed for primarily giving scholarships to kids that need them and of employees, but it also helps out when we have a federally declared disaster, and like a hurricane or like a big storm or even a tornadoes or whatever is federally declared as a disaster, and then we can step in and provide monetary support to our employees so that they can make repairs to their homes or buy food or whatever it might be that they need.
Great. Yeah, those immediate needs, and it's so important at that time. I think this past year was just extreme because it was so many states involved, and we were toggling between is that the first storm, the second storm, or the third storm, and how do we prioritize getting to the people that need it the most first? And it's such a good feeling, but it's overwhelming too to know that people are going through that. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember back in 04, 05, we thought maybe this was going to be the new normal with all the hurricanes that came through in that short period of time, and then it got to the point where it wasn't that terrible in Florida. It wasn't like we were getting hit with 2, 3, 4, 5 storms a year, and then the last couple of years has been pretty brutal for sure for everybody. So hopefully we're not in a that's not the new normal. Hopefully that's just, again, hopefully we've got a nice 20-year period until we get.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Good.
Well, good. So talk to me about Bealls. What made you make the decision to come to Bealls?
So I was with Kohl's for 16 years. So I consider myself a loyal person. I've had 2 career jobs in my life, Bealls and Kohl's. Sometimes those get mixed up, Kohl's and Bealls, right? The similar sounding. I think I did pretty good with that after like my first year. And it's always that. All right. But I had a great career with Kohl's and worked through the stores. So I was I haven't always been in training and development. I led ASM roles throughout my first couple of years. And I will say I moved a lot, not states. I just moved a lot over the Michigan-Ohio border for new store openings and just had so many great experiences in ASM. And I think it really started to catapult me into the place where I was going to be promoted to a store manager pretty young for the organization. So as I was collecting my thoughts for this podcast, I thought back to it, and I was promoted to a store manager at the age of 26. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it, but they let me run like a $20 million store. And that to me was just kind of like, oh gosh, that it was cool at the time. I felt confident, but that's a pretty big volume store to run as, a 26-year-old. But I was really hungry and passionate, and there were opportunities where they finally asked me to relocate to north of Detroit. And I kind of became known as the fixer, somebody who would go into a store and be able to, not only from a business and operational perspective, to be able to, kind of change that business and the people and the culture. So I did that I had 3 stores that I managed, and then was promoted to the district manager role for them. And that was in the central Michigan area. So I spent my time at Kohl's as a district manager for just around 6 years. And I loved my job, loved where I was. There was not one event that said, hey, you know what, I think it's time to transition. It was a series of events. There was some relocation things that were maybe being asked of me. It wasn't the right timing. Just some personal things. And kind of, I'm not a fan of the cold. And I just kept moving north. And I'm like, what am I doing? So a lot of things, as you say, the puzzle pieces fell into line. And I essentially, in 2015, made the decision that I was going to, take a different career path. I think it's funny. I love this story, but I actually came down to Florida 2 months before I decided to leave Kohl's, and my brother-in-law had been living here for his career, and my sister was still living in Ohio, and I'm very close with them. We spent our whole adult lives living 4 hours apart, but we came down here and visited, him quite a bit. And we went skydiving just randomly out of the blue in March. And it was kind of this like adrenaline thing where I'm like, oh, I just took this big leap of faith and jumped out of an airplane. And I'm kind of in a place in my career where I need to make a decision. So I'm just going to take another leap. And I resigned my position at Kohl's. I know this doesn't always, it didn't make my mom happy at the time, or, I got questioned by some people, but it was essentially, didn't have that backup plan. I didn't have that next job in place. And it was because I was interested in starting to explore other avenues such as training and development. What could those next steps look like? And I got a call from my sister a couple months after I left and said, do you want to move to Florida? And we picked up and came down here. So, so a little bit of time off there without really having stepped into a new position, transitioned down here early 2016. And of course, I knew about Bealls because I'd been coming down frequently. And sorry to say this, but for a while for me, it was Bealls. And then my brother-in-law kept saying, Cami, it's Bealls. It's Bealls. And I was like, really? And so sure enough, but I think moving to the Bradenton area, I kind of always knew, like, I've got to look into this company. If I go back into retail, this means something, right? They're located right here where I want to live. Great opportunity for me to get engaged with the organization. So I sent a resume in and connected with somebody in the talent acquisition world at that time, had a nice conversation. And then CJ, who's still here with us, he's the director of talent acquisition. He called me as well.
We did a podcast together.
Yep, it was a great podcast. Yep. He sits right beside me. He's my neighbor in the office. And just had a really nice conversation. And he talked to me about, career interest and possibly going down a different path, but also connected me with a regional director for Bealls, Florida at the time. And great conversation again. So my 3 touch points with Bealls, I would say, were wonderful. I had great conversations, but I was also contacted immediately. There was just a lot of good things in the air. So I kind of consider this is the time frame I started dating Bealls, because it was a long distance relationship for a little while. There were no positions that I felt were viable for me at the time when speaking to the regional director. She did have a conversation with me about potentially stepping back into a store manager role and possibly managing Store 24, the flagship at the time. And I thought about it, and it was just one of those where I knew my aspirations and my capacity to lead larger teams, having managed $220 million of volume at Kohl's as a district manager and 55 salaried employees and 1,300 auxiliary employees. I was like, I'm just not sure that I'm ready yet. I knew I was transitioning my life and probably had to take a little step back, but wasn't quite ready for that. So I just said, let's keep in touch. Let's stay connected. And we did. So somewhere over that next, year, there was another position that came up, and it actually was multi-unit. So they reached back out to me. And I essentially did interview for the position. It was a district manager position for Bealls, Florida, down in the Southwest area, and met with the vice president of store operations, a couple more people, interviewed. I did get the job offer. Unfortunately, at the time, it was you've got to move all the way down there, and we probably want you to live in Fort Myers. And I know that doesn't sound like a huge distance. And I think now Bealls would probably be like, that's fine if you want to drive from where you are. It was just a different environment. And I think there were some opportunities down in that market that they really wanted someone who could get to stores, a little bit more readily and not be so far away. So again, the dating went on, but I did decline that offer. And at that point I was like, Bealls is not going to want to talk to me anymore. Right. But I think through the way that I explained it and just really, helped them understand, I didn't move down here to be closer to my family, to move away that soon. And it was heartfelt, but the connections continued. So it's probably another 6 or 7 more months. And lo and behold, the training and development manager position came up for Bealls, Florida. And I had actually went ahead and pursued my SHRM certification at that time, so Society for Human Resource Management. I got my certified professional certification in that time frame where I was doing odd jobs and looking to come on board with Bealls. So it was a very natural fit. I'd kind of taken some classes to go down that route. I was always naturally engaged in the people piece at Kohl's too. I was put on committees that were around associate relations and talent development and things along those lines. So everything just kind of started to position. And I finally was like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to take this manager position. And so I started in March of 2018. I'll never forget, there was a lot of realizations that year. I think the first part of it was that I don't lead anybody anymore. That was different for me. And also I'm a support partner, and you have to do things in a much different way when you're a support partner than when you are what is seen as a authority figure and you have a team working for you. You have to influence differently. You have to be able to get people to come on board with your ideas. So that was a pivotal point in my career. And I also think, I don't like using the word take a step back again, but I was going into a manager role where I wasn't leading anybody anymore. And it was great because it forced me to go from being a leader to more of a doer again. I went back and refreshed my skills in Excel and, technology platforms because I didn't have anybody doing this for me. I had to do it for myself. And I think that's important sometimes if you are looking to change your career to understand that you might need to take a few steps back to catapult yourself forward and to continue to grow and get back to that place that you feel matches your skill set, because it's an invaluable time frame for you to learn things and really kind of test yourself on what it is that you need to know to get to that next level again.
Yeah, it makes sense. What was the culture like when you got here? What were your initial impressions of the new job and the new responsibility? That's
a great question. The Bealls Florida team was just dynamic. It was fun, Matt. And I actually, my office was on this floor here. It was in the, at first, it was kind of tucked away in the corner. And then shortly, I think it was 8 months after I got here, I did get promoted to a director level role, which I can talk to. But just the welcoming environment of that first week. I mean, I got here and I had touch bases set up with everybody in the store operations team. And I was meeting individuals across the organization. And back to that whole, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to learn to do these things on my own. And I don't have anybody working with me. That wasn't true. I had so many support partners. I think the third day I was here, I got assigned to go out and film a guest experience training. And I already had 3 immediate partners that were working with me and people that had nothing to do with training and development, but they were stepping in to support the process. And I just remember walking away that first week and thinking, wow, this place is fun. This is nice. And it's engaging. And, I started with Kohl's when there was less than 250 stores. So I knew that. I grew up with Kohl's, right? I saw so much change. So many different things, I think, invaluable for my career to learn how to navigate through that change. But some of those feelings that I had in my early years with Kohl's, they weren't there towards the end. Obviously businesses change, companies grow. I felt that again. I felt like I could have a voice again. I could really make an impact again. There's not so many there. There was a time at Kohl's where there wasn't very many layers, and then there was a time where there was a lot, and you just didn't get to have that impact because you had to work through so many different avenues to get there. And I felt that immediately. I was like, I'm going to be able to do some really cool stuff here. Yeah,
nice. Yeah, there was a transition to one division in training and development. What was that? A year ago or so, right?
Yeah. So that was at the beginning of 2024. That was an outstanding decision. If I haven't formally thanked you for your part in that, we basically took all of our resources that we were putting into training and development across the organization, and it became one consolidated under one reporting structure to human resources. So previously, I was the director of training and development for just the field. So just the stores, I say just, it's a lot of stores and it's a lot of people, our largest population. But the concentration was there and it was specific around that focus. And then we did have another leader similar to my position at corporate who was leading the corporate efforts as well as the distribution efforts.
Right.
So it all started to evolve a little bit well before we decided to consolidate. And I do think from what I've heard and from my leader, Dan Doyle, that's been kind of a goal, for the organization to how do we make this a reality so that we can combine our resources, much like we did with One Bealls, our support functions. And, we had all started to work together, myself and the corporate DC teams, well before this, but we started talking about resources and efficiencies, and we were doing great things in the field. They were doing great things at corporate, but we kind of just figured out that wow, you're creating a training and development for leading change, and so are we at the same time. And we could do that together. And then the next step is, wow, you might be teaching something different. So our corporate teams know something different than our field teams. And it was just so obvious before this transition happened that there was going to be a transition and needed to be at some point. And I didn't know at that time if I was going to be selected to lead it all or be a part of it. And that was okay, because it's, using the word right, but it was the right thing to do for our associates, because we're able to provide so much more training now and development opportunities, and we're consistent in the message that we're giving. So that decision was just absolutely a game changer. I'll say game changer with a few things today, but that was a game changer for T&D and the organization.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, the One Bealls thing, back when I first took over, the company was like total game changer, and it was huge for a lot of different areas. But it's not as if this change that just happened with T&D happened a year ago. But it began, that transition to One Bealls began 5 years ago, but it's still happening today. And that's the thing. And it's going to continue to happen into the future. And I mean, there's more areas, that can be consolidated, and not just consolidation for the purpose of consolidation, but consolidation to make us more connected. And it's, there's still tremendous opportunity as it relates to that. So there's actually going to be at the town hall in a couple of days, we're going to talk about this a little bit, but we've added a B to the front of One Bealls, and we're branding it Bob. So becoming One Bealls.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hot off the press.
Yeah. Hot off the press.
Great.
Right. So, I'm not sure when this episode will release, if it'll be before or after town hall, but becoming One Bealls is going to be, kind of the mantra, go forward. So
that's great.
The motto, I guess. So,
and I lived through that time frame, obviously being here for 7 years. That was kind of a big transition point for me too. And, 2019, I was working for Just Bealls, Florida. Had the strangest job at that time, Matt, but it was pretty cool. I said I got promoted to director, but there wasn't really a need to have a director of training and development for Just Bealls, Florida. I think there was 72 stores at the time. So my leader said, well, we've got a director role for you, but you're going to have to put on your operations hat again, and you're going to still be training and development, but we want you to be the director of training and development and store operations. And I was like, okay, it makes sense to me. Plus, that's what I did, right? When you're a district manager, you do all the operational aspects. So I felt good about my capabilities to do that. But I got to tell you, it was so interesting. I would be teaching, like, a situational leadership was a module that we were teaching at the time. And I'd have to step out to answer questions about truck deliveries and why payroll was overspent and all of these different things going on. It was like right brain, left brain, right brain, left brain. But it was a really cool opportunity because it taught me about the business quicker. So getting to the point of the One Bealls, we had kind of started that process right at the end of 2019. And so I knew that there might be some changes, some things coming our way. And I think it was not a long-term plan, but it was a little longer than it planned on being with 2020 and the pandemic. And I had an office right across from the boardroom here. Never forget the day that they said, you guys are going home. And you may come back to this office, you might not. And it was about a month later, I got a phone call saying, hey, Cami, I think you're going to be really happy about this opportunity you're being offered out of some of the changes, that we're making. We're moving up One Bealls. You're now going to report to a different individual, Chris Collins, under the store operations, but you don't have to do the operations side anymore. You're going to be, focused on training and development for all of the stores in the field. So I felt very fortunate at that time. Not everything was going, well for people when it came to, changes that had to be made in the world and our safety and our mental state and all kinds of things going on. So I felt very fortunate and lucky that I was actually kind of getting my dream job at that point. To be able to really dive in and focus on training and development. I love operations. I think if I got asked to do operations job tomorrow, I could. But training and development is really where I feel like I can benefit the organization the most. So COVID had some wins for me, or the pandemic per se, because it was a time that I think we made some great decisions even back then for the whole company, the whole organization, but T&D as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the values have been kind of something that's been transformational for the company, and it's caused us to, I think about things in a different way, and kind of incorporating those now becomes kind of the the next step of how and where do we think it makes sense to incorporate the values, and so one of the things that you're responsible for, of course, is what has been traditionally referred to as the review process of the mid-year reviews and the annual reviews, and kind of getting those done, and I guess how have the values, how are the values going to update that process?
Yes, we're right in the middle of this right now. So we're getting ready to embark on how we start to incorporate the values into our appraisal process. And I think, this is something that I'm working directly with you on, and my team is supporting that. And we had really started to look at it right before our mid-year appraisal process this year, which starts in the February-March timeframe. We had gotten pretty far on it, felt really good about some things, but then there were just a few things that made us kind of stop and pause. And I appreciate that with you, because I really want to make this great for the associates, and set out what the intention is to really be able to have that come to fruition for the associates. So we're looking at, I would say, being a little edge cutting when it comes to this, maybe being a little bit different from, honestly, probably what a lot of companies are doing out there. Stoic. I did a little research on it, actually, Matt. And it's not something you can readily find a ton of information on. It's not like companies put their playbook out there in their forms, but there is some good communication and articles out there about how people really aren't navigating in the direction that we might be headed to. I've seen like 15-16% of companies are exploring doing something a little bit different. And by different, I mean form, not necessarily substance. So they're looking at their forms or the technology and the way in which they incorporate their appraisals, the timeliness of it. Some organizations are going to maybe once a month. It's more of an informal process or something. But it doesn't feel like companies right now are looking at the actual substance of what's happening in those conversations. And I think that that's what I'm most excited about around where we're headed, is let's forget about the form. Let's forget about exactly what that form looks like and how easy it is to navigate through. And let's really focus on what's important, the conversations that we're having in those moments. And that's where we're headed with this, is, to take it to more of an empowerment process where the associate feels empowered to talk about what their development needs are, share with their leader, what they feel that they want to do in their careers and how they want to progress, how they want to get there. And then that leader, that manager, is that support person. So it's not all about just the black and white things we do every day. And you did this great because you achieved X, Y, or Z. It's how did you achieve X, Y, and Z? And allowing people to feel empowered that they can do that through the openness and transparency that we're incorporating into these two processes.
Yeah, all the values come from within. That's the biggest thing, is like they're really more of virtues as opposed to values, from the standpoint that they come from within. And so empowerment, when we say that, I feel like a lot of times people feel like, oh, my manager is going to empower me. They're going to do something specific for me. But in reality, all the values, whether it's authenticity, accountability, acceptance, compassion, openness, transparency, empowerment, they all come from within. Every individual has that within them, the ability to empower themselves. And so finding a way that we can create conversations or allow people to have those conversations with their direct report that allow that empowerment to take place is really what we need to be focused on with those forms, and making sure that the forms facilitate and even encourage that conversation to take place. And I think that the incorporation of openness and transparency into the mid-year and annual review process is going to be just a game changer, just to be able to focus on that and to create a safe place for people to really express how they feel and what they need to be the most productive, most efficient, most, just to allow them to enjoy their jobs as much as they possibly can, but also, accomplish a lot and get a lot done is critical. So, it's going to be fun to it's a less judgmental approach.
Yes.
it's taking out the judgment of good, bad, right, wrong, and more about lifting the person up and having them, find that ability within themselves to accomplish great things.
Yeah, and I think it's all about the framework and how we really put it out there for our leaders or managers who are leading these conversations, for the associates to understand that's the intention. And I think it's going to be very important in how we package that. We're not telling people to judge people on the values. We're asking them to practice the values as they're having these conversations. And I just think it's going to be such a win from a talent management perspective too. Matt, we spend a lot of time looking at, appraisals and sitting in talent meetings and understanding things. And a lot of times we get hung up on the wrong things about those 2 times of the year or the feedback process. And this is going to give us an opportunity to kind of set the groundwork. And I'll be honest, right? I think we're going to give the organization something great this year, and then we're going to turn around and look at it and say, oh yeah, this can evolve to more. And this conversation in 3 years could look different. It could be that it is more timely feedback and less formal 2 times a year, because we've gotten really good at how we're given feedback and supporting people to know that they can feel empowered to make decisions and choices for themselves about their career and their growth and development.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
we had a great kickoff meeting, I think, to kind of start this thing up and kind of, dive into ways that we could make this whole process better and more aligned with the company values. And I was able to sit down with you and several members of your team. What were your takeaways from that meeting? What was your impression?
Yeah, that was great, because Dan Doyle had come to me, months before and started having conversation. And Matt's interested. He's seeing all this training that your team is delivering, and he's interested in how we can start to talk about the values as we're doing training, and how do these different training courses we're teaching connect to values. So him and I started to talk about it, and I don't want to use the word intimidating, but I also it was at first, because this is a big deal for our organization, and for us to be able to articulate it right and make sure that we're carrying your message forward. It's an honor, but it's a big responsibility to say, hey, Cami, can you and your team start to navigate through this and really talk about these in your training sessions and when you speak in talent meetings, and of course it's the right place. I feel like the values are so rooted in T&D. But Dan and I came up with the idea, like, this would be great if you could sit down with Matt and your team could sit down with Matt and really have a discussion with him, so that he could, first of all, see how we understand the values, and are we in a position where we can be able to tie those into training? And if not, how do we talk about them more? How do we connect? How do we, just really get some isolated time with you to talk about that? And the meeting was an hour and a half to 2 hours. We sat and we talked. It was so fun for my team. I think the great part about that for my team was I had the chance to sit down with them ahead of time, right? You got to prepare people for big meetings like that. And we did it in such an organic way where we just had open dialogue. And I really wanted to see how they felt about things, and, what values resonated with them the most. Where did they connect? With the values, and just to make sure that they were moving into that conversation, with the right intention and what that they felt comfortable being able to interact, but also to ask questions. I think there was a lot of great questions asked that day. So thank you. That was absolutely a great day, and it helped us really feel confident that we can talk about the values in our training courses, start to tie those things in. We're just dabbling right now. I sent you some training courses the other day to take a look at where we did incorporate some thoughts around it. And then that's really helped us with the empowerment process, and looking forward to these changes we're making to the annual appraisal, because they all feel very connected to it. They understand where we want to take this and what this could look like, and that day had a lot to do with it. So that was a pretty great experience.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, there's a lot there with the values. They're very deep. They're very helpful. They help create a company culture that's just healthy, and it's a culture that's safe for people to be able to express themselves and work with other people and not feel like they're being judged or blamed or whatever it might be. So yeah, they're critical. They're really critical, and kind of your area specifically, and working the values into your world and having you guys really understand them
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Yeah,
It is.
it's very important, and they're so deep, and there's so dynamic. There's so much to them that it's easy to kind of not really. It's easy to miss the point. It's easy to to look at one of them and not really think you get it, but not really totally get it. And I think that the more that you guys can the more that conversations that we can have, and the more that we can kind of begin to use them in our teaching and training, the more the company is going to understand it. And ultimately, I mean, if you look at the values, it's like they are. The first book that we read as a senior team was Good to Great, and we learned that the ego was the biggest threat to business, and that it was the difference between a great business and a weak business was ego. And they compared all these businesses, and they looked at all the leadership within the businesses, Walgreens and CVS, two companies that started at the same time, in different places, but they had the same opportunity. One failed, one succeeded. They compared all these companies, and it was ego. It was ego within the company that either destroyed the company or a lack of ego that made the company really flourish. And you see the same thing in relationships. You see the same thing at the individual level. You see the same thing at the nation level. You see the same thing at at any level that you look at. It's that ego or lack of ego that causes separation, or a lack of ego that causes connection. And so with each of these words, with each of these values, the opposite is some form of ego. It's like, and we don't have to go through every one of them, but if we're practicing the values, then we're minimizing that ego, that mind, that, there's all kinds of words that you can use to describe what it is that we're getting at. The movie character, the role playing, the reactivity, so they're really beautiful in that way, and in the way that they can help people kind of be their true authentic self, and so I'm excited to have that become more and more of a part of our culture as we move forward. And certainly with your world, it's just critical to speak the language and to understand.
And we have the opportunity, because we are exposed to everyone in the organization, from a part-time associate clear up to SVPs. We create and develop training that everybody sees and touches. So this is just like, gosh, why didn't we do this sooner almost? And it's been a big evolution. We've had a lot going on this last year, but I think probably 6 months into roles, we started changing things in T&D. This came up, and we started having that dialogue and conversation. I think it's just going to continue to move forward, and it's going to help people who haven't had exposure to it for 5-6 years now, or 2 or 3 for me, a little bit more intently. As much as we have, it's going to help them understand it sooner and really be able to relate to it. So very excited for how we're going to navigate and change and evolve and continue to do great things with that.
For sure. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Good.
What's next for T&D? What's coming up?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about what we did this past year to get to the next. But I think some of the notable things, Matt, in this last year of us being able to, really combine our resources and collaborate as one team in T&D is we started out with the focus on leadership development and interpersonal skills. And as we really dove in, like I said, when we were separate divisions, we'd accomplished a lot. But I think the thing that we recognized is we had a lot of duplicates, things going on in the organization from a training perspective, all very good. But how do we combine those resources? And we heard it through CDPs, our career development plans. We saw it in appraisals. We hear it in talent meetings. We need more leadership classes. Do we have a class in leading change? Do we have a class in accepting change? What about presentation skills? And we didn't at the time. I shouldn't say we didn't completely, but we weren't offering them to as many people. So we have some amazing development programs in the organization for our senior leaders, our mid-level managers. We have programs out in the stores, but those were targeted and concentrated on certain jobs, certain leaders within the organization. Those classes were being taught there, but they weren't being taught globally. So the thing that was very apparent to us is we needed to do more training for more people, for a larger audience. So we came up with this notion of training for everyone last year. I think when I actually stood up at a town hall and told everybody that we were going to create training for everyone and deliver training for everyone, I think my boss probably gulped a little hard on that one, like, wow, that's a big statement to make, Cami. And I think my team maybe thought I was, not all there at that time, but it was almost for us that like, we can do this and we're moving in that direction. So we spent all of 2024 figuring out how to get there. And in the beginning of 2025, we launched 12 new leadership development courses that are taught for the majority of individuals across the organization that are leading and managing individuals. There's some leadership courses that are offered for everyone, but we really looked at these 12 courses and how do we get them out to the audiences that we're wanting to, engage in this training. So we teach them in person, and we call them live leadership development courses. And by live, we mean either in person, and that's me and you in a classroom, engaging. Those sessions are a little bit longer because we want to make sure that it's about the connectivity, the conversation that happens in those courses, and also the breakouts and application of skills. So we do that. And that's really primarily targeted towards our corporate and DC individuals here locally. We will teach in-person classes if we're out traveling in the field. But a way that we've been able to engage so many learners is virtual. So we also offer these classes. So if we offer a leading change class in person, we'll offer it virtually. Our virtual audience, we are able to engage so many more learners. We've had some virtual calls with 150 people and 175. You don't want to do that for all topics. But there are global topics that you can really impact, and you do it through a way that you're including them still in the chat, or we're looking into breakout rooms and teams, and how do you really create a dynamic way to train. But it has been that's another game changer for us as teams, and being able to train people virtually. That all kind of came about in the pandemic timeframe too, and thank heavens that it did, because before, it was expensive. We would travel out, maybe one topic a year you would teach to the store teams. Now we've created a store manager leadership essentials. It's in its third year, wrapping up its third year. And that's a class that we've taught quarterly to the store managers. Those were things we could never do before. So we've done that this past year. We looked at how are we going to teach people, get these different modalities. That's a training and development word for the avenues in which we teach. Or people can learn. But I think the next piece of it really is that self-paced training. So not every learner wants to learn the same way. And some people prefer in person. Some people prefer virtual. A lot of people prefer to be able to sit down and take a course for themselves where they're self-directed. They maybe start it and then stop at a certain point in the module and go back later. Some people like all three, different approaches to training. So we have to provide that for everyone in the organization. Is people want to learn at a different pace. So that's really been our goal this past year, is how do we create different avenues and different ways for people to learn. We took those self-paced trainings that are usually like 20 to 30 minutes long, broken down into sections, and we started doing micro training. So now we have 5-minute videos that's almost kind of like your shorts, where you get people interested. But it's not enough that they don't need to go back in and take another module. So with the 12 leadership classes that we're focused on just the development piece, we've taught 45 so far. My team facilitates those. We have 15 more to go this year, so I think that's pretty outstanding. And then as far as self-paced, that was the one that we had some things out there at the first part of the year. Last year, we had 4 self-paced modules, turned into 5. The year progressed. We decided to get a little interested in AI technology, and now we have over 20 self-paced training modules, either in leadership development, between that or business excellence classes or something operationally focused. We've produced 20 videos this year. So if you would ask me this time last year if I thought we would have 20 new training modules out there, I would have said no, because it's cumbersome to do it the old way. But now that we're using some AI technology, I think the sky's the limit for my team this next year, and being able to just really get a lot more options and opportunities and modalities out there for people to learn. And self-paced is going to be a big piece of that.
Nice. Yeah. AI is going to change everything.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a game changer.
It is.
It really is.
I think in 5 years, it's going to be completely different than it is today. And it's going to be, the pace of change is going to be so rapid that I think it's going to surprise a lot of people.
It is. There's been some startling articles lately, and I think you have to dig through them though to really understand that it's it's just learning a new skill set. People are going to need to learn a new skill set. And much like us in training and development this past year, we just started we taught ourselves AI through AI, right? You just get in, you start to learn things. The way that we're able to articulate the information that we're putting out there, the pace that we're able to create training documents or pull together resources, it's just amazing. It still takes us on the back end, right? Because we need to make sure it sounds like Bealls and that it's what we want to teach our team members and it's the message that we want out there. So there's the human side of it, but it just speeds up that front end of productivity so much for us. The video modules we're using, I've used this statistic before, and some team members were faster with the old way we used to do things than others, but some of these video modules or trainings we've created before would be 25 to 40 isolated hours using some of the more traditional tools. And that's isolated time. That's like you're not doing anything else that week. You are hiding in a room creating a training. And that's why we didn't have much. Well, now that training module, as we continue to kind of perfect our skills at this, this video creation tool we're using, it's 4 to 8 hours to create that same kind of training. So it's about leveraging that, but now look at where we can go with it. Instead of having 5 modules this year, we have 20, and we can continue to strategically put more training out there. I think the strategic part's important though, because yes, Monday we launched an Accepting Change self-paced on the Bealls Learning Hub, and we have another one that we're working on, mentor-mentee resources. We do an amazing job with mentorships in the company, so we felt that was important to, put some training out there that would help people better support that process. But I also don't want to put 5 or 6 trainings out in a row. I want to put one training out there at the beginning of April so people will really embrace it and take it, and then we'll strategically position trainings together. So if, say, we had 10 trainings that we're sitting on right now that are developed, they're probably going to be released in a very strategic way, because there's no point in just throwing a lot of things out there. We really want people to take the time to embrace training, but also to apply it. That's one of the biggest parts. Great if you took a training class, but what are you doing with it 3 months later and 6 months later? Right. Yeah, you have to absorb it and contemplate to the point where you actually allow it to make change happen. You do. Yeah. And the AI thing that's fun with what we're using is it allows us to create our avatars. So I haven't done mine yet. My team keeps telling me, you've got to do your avatar. But my 4 other team members have created their avatars, and it's pretty awesome. So the Accepting Change training that we created the other day, we're utilizing a live version of avatars for things. And it's just really fun. And I do get a lot of feedback when we've created some of these different trainings so far that, well, it's not you or it's not your team members. We want it to be them. And that's great. But, there's reasons sometimes where we don't always use this, but we're trying to make that connection for trainings that are like the mid-year as we move forward in that, where we probably will use our avatars, because then it's really our T&D leadership team talking. Even though it's not them, it is them. But it's pretty crazy how spot on it is. Like, you put a picture up of a team member and you put the avatar up and you're like, all right. So nice. We're having fun with it, but it's helping us move forward faster. And it's been great. The last few weeks I've been in contact with Karen Beebe, our CTO. It sounds like we're going to be doing some AI training, a little bit of 101 for some leaders, see where we're at with things. And I think this is, I'm getting the idea that this is probably going to be something that's going to add to our plate here real quick. So kind of talking to my team, but it's the right thing to do if we want to embrace this. And I think where I'm at with it, I think there's a lot of individuals really leveraging AI across the organization, but I do think we have a lot more individuals that need some basics on it. So us figuring out what that mix is and developing some training or some virtual calls where we can get people up to speed, I think that's going to be probably on our plate over the next couple months. So nice. Yeah. Love it. Well, good. What did we miss, if anything? It's a great conversation. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I would say you asked the question. I kind of went back to what we did. I'd love to end with what's ahead in T&D and get a little bit of a plug in there. We have so many great things going on, but I think in the next year or so, it's really about how do we continue to give people the opportunity to engage in business skills and operational skills for the stores. So we're going to continue to create more training content and reach across the organization with that. I think one thing ahead of us here in the next quarter is our College of Off-Price Retail Excellence, which is our training that's primarily focused on our merchants and our planners. That is got a refurbishing, and it's relaunching here in the next couple of weeks. So we're getting that back on the books. There's just so many exciting things happening from a resource perspective. We're collaborating with CJ to do some things around interviewing best practices, and really just everything's designed to how can we use it in the future, but how can we also use it across the organization? So anything we do at corporate, how does that translate to support the fields if it's applicable? We have a lot of projects going on in the DC right now, where we have an individual on our team who's focused on the distribution center training individually, really making an impact. So just a lot of great things. And I think the other thing that we'll start to see in training and development is we've created a really nice dashboard that helps tell us what our data is. What are we doing out there? And that's not something that T&D always has, right? It's like, oh, you're digging through all these reports to figure out how many people took training. Well, we have a dashboard now, and we know how many people have taken training. We know what it looks like by the different areas of concentration. And we're going to continue to really talk about that ROI piece. What is that return on investment? And is our training working? And how do we make adjustments? And what other courses are out there? And how do we leverage AI to make that happen? So T&D has a really nice strategy. I think our first year, we've accomplished a lot of what we wanted to. I think this next year is that next layer of it. And then, just continue to evolve as the world evolves, as the values evolve,
as Bealls evolves too. Yeah, becoming One Bealls. I mean, that's going to be pretty exciting.
It's going to be neat
as Bealls Florida and Bealls kind of move towards the same model, towards the Bealls model.
Yes.
Call it off price, call it what you want. The College of Retail Excellence core will really be able to help a lot of merchants within the Bealls Florida organization. I think kind of understand and grasp those key understandings that only is more off price related than probably what they're used to. So I think that program itself is going to be critical for the company.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As we move forward. So.
Yeah, and I think it's fun. I think T&D can really have a big place in it. So don't hesitate to ask. It's neat now that we're producing more stuff, but we get asked. Like last week, I think I picked up 2 new projects, and we're getting a lot more requests because we are moving faster, and we're able to move faster and really have a bigger impact on things. But again, always wanting to do that with purpose, so that people can really embrace what those training offerings are, what that level of empowerment it is for them to make career choices. I think that's another great thing that we're doing is we're offering elective classes. I don't know that a lot of companies are doing that. A lot of companies say, we think that we're not good at change and we need to teach a change class. Well, we'll certainly do that if there's a topic that store managers need individually, and we are. But those classes that we're teaching, they're elective. It's letting you decide what it is that you think you're interested in. First of all, I just want to take that class because I have an interest, or I want to take that class because it's something that's going to help me grow. So that elective piece of it, I think that empowerment part of it is going to be huge, and getting the values message out there, and what may come for T&D with some of this One Bealls stuff that I'm excited to hear about on Friday. So glad I got the early scoop on that.
Yep, so,
awesome.
For sure. Well, good. It's been great to chat with you.
Yes, you too.
Yeah, great conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's a good day to start a Wednesday talking about all my favorite things. So.
Right. Yeah, it's cool. It's just like another meeting, but we get to record it and let other people listen to it. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. No, really appreciate you. Appreciate your time. Appreciate what you're doing and what you're doing for the company and for all the people within the company. It's critical. It's super, super important, and doing a great job. So let's keep it going, and we'll keep the company, more and more connected every day with the work that you're doing. So
great. Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.